Good morning and welcome. Oh, good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is curating your story. And what we mean by that is being very conscious and deliberate about the stories that we tell about ourselves and our lives, particularly to ourselves. But we tend to voice these things to others as well, but mostly to ourselves. And the stories that we tell have a profound impact on our experience. And that's why it's so important to be conscious and deliberate in their management, so to speak. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules, creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and rub them vigorously against each other to feel the friction, the temperature, the tension. And then as you release your palms from one another, feel the buzzing in your hands and allow all these sensations to bring you present right here, right now, to this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Good morning, and welcome. It's great to be here with you this morning. So, curating your story. So this came up, actually, it came up multiple times yesterday, and actually, I think it comes up with regularity, although not necessarily so explicitly. But I was with a friend who was talking. Good morning, Bernadette. So good to have you here with us this morning. Bernadette says, "Good morning, woohoo, and on time, LOL." Great to have you here, Bernadette, and everybody else who's joining us. So we're talking about curating your story. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here with us this morning. And so yesterday I was talking with some friends, and one of them was talking about how, other members of her family were so successful, and she, she wasn't in a similar circumstance, and she was going on about how, this wasn't enough and that wasn't enough in her accomplishments particularly. And we had a conversation about curating your story, because as she said, well, it's just the fact. And my other friend and I were like, no, it's not the fact at all. It's completely interpretation. So interestingly, we will create a story about ourselves based on comparisons with others, for example, and also hold up those comparisons or hold up those metrics as something that is meaningful. We apply meaning to these circumstances. So for instance, if I have a family member who has $1 million home and I rent an apartment, then that makes me less successful. Well, that's a false equation, right? I mean, we get to look at how we measure success, and also to be recognizing inherent value. like that the standard metrics for success or value or worthiness are very, very, very stilted and skewed, and not reflective of our deepest values most often. And so when we hold ourselves to these metrics, we can do tremendous damage to ourselves, right? And it was very interesting. It was a really profound conversation, because when you look at a glass that had an 8-ounce glass of water that has 4 ounces of water in it, how do we interpret that glass? We all know the trope is the glass half full or half empty. And it's both and neither, right? It's like the half full is an interpretation, half empty is an interpretation, where 4 ounces of water in an 8-ounce glass is more factual, right? And so Bernadette says, material things are only there to enjoy, never to measure one's value. If only we would live that way, Bernadette. Oh my gosh, it would be a very different world. It can all be gone in a heartbeat. Absolutely, absolutely. Our true value is you yourself, 100%. And this goes to the conversation about sufficiency, that we are enough just by virtue of our being here, that in reality, we needn't prove ourselves to anyone in any way, although all our systems are set up for us to be proving ourselves, and for us to be competing, and for us to be differentiating ourselves and quote unquote excelling, right? It's all measured against other people, which and situations, which creates an othering just by its very nature, which is very much at the heart of the ills that we collectively face globally at the moment. So, these false values get to be reassessed in order for us to be able to create a world that can work. So Bernadette says, it's not set up, it's a story we forever tell ourselves. Well, the thing is that the story that we forever tell ourselves is often a story that we learn from our environment, from where we grew up, inside our families, inside our towns, inside our religions, inside our cultures. And we learn these stories and we don't even know we've learned them. We believe that they're true because that's what we've always known. That's what we were always exposed to. Good morning, Jenny. So great to have you here with us this morning. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about the importance of conscious and deliberate curation of your story. And so in this conversation, one of the things that arose that was particularly interesting was the awareness of this conversation that kind of went all the time, the negative self-talk, the conversation about, I'm not good enough, I just got left, I'm this, I'm that, I'm to this, I'm to that, I'm not enough this, I'm not enough that. This whole conversation that is sort of a perpetual noise in the background. And what we get to recognize is that we are not that conversation. So in another conversation I had yesterday was really interesting. Someone brought up the book. Let me just think if I can remember what it's called. I think I talked to you about it before, The Untethered Self, or The Untethered Soul. And there's a new book out by the same author, I believe, called Living Untethered. And the big thing was that is to recognize that all that conversation, all that chatter is not who you are. It's chatter, and it's programmed, and it's learned for the most part. So Jenny says, Bruce Lipton says we are unconsciously programmed of all our beliefs the first 7 years of life. Well, I know that, yes, Jenny says, Untethered Soul, good book. Exactly. Well, that's what we're talking about. And as far as being programmed with all our beliefs the first 7 years of life, I do believe that our beliefs can change and that we're exposed to new beliefs or new opportunities for beliefs. But first 7 years of our lives, we're immersed in trying to understand the world. I don't know. I'm still trying to understand the world. So, it's just that the first 7 years, perhaps we question less, right? So we're immersed in trying to understand the world. We're sponges sucking in everything, learning all this stuff, having all these experiences, experiencing trauma, making decisions and choices around all that. There's lots and lots and lots that's going on with a young person as their brain is forming, as their perceptions are forming, as their experience and the kind of getting a sense of what the rules are and how the world works. So there's a very deeply formative phase, and that's our experience of what reality is. And we don't even know to question it until we get exposed to something else that contrasts with our own experience. So Rosalind says, if the story is I eat healthy, but the meals I actually make are sometimes not all that healthy, we can make peace between the storyteller and the creator. Who's the person making the statement of what is healthy? Yeah, I love this question or conversation, Rosalind, because it takes us into really our multidimensional nature. So when we say, I eat healthy, who is it that's saying I eat healthy? Who is it that's observing whether I actually eat healthy or not? Maybe there's a me that's asserting that I eat healthy, and then there's another level of experience that's saying, well, sometimes I eat healthy and sometimes I don't, but I still overall feel like like there's these levels of observer, of voice, of presence that we are. And I guess what I'm talking about is being the curator of the story too. Jenny says, Dr. Joe Dispenza and Gabor Mate talk about childhood shapes us as adults too. I love, 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 love Joe Dispenza. I haven't heard of Gabor Mate. And yes, I mean, this is not news. This is kind of Psych 101 to say that our childhood shapes who we become in very, very many ways, as long as the beliefs and traumas and decisions and declarations that we make as children remain hidden or unaccessed or unconscious, then they continue to shape us. And so many of those things, they're patterns, they're things that we learn, so we learn from others how to treat ourselves, and we learn from others how to treat others. So, and we learn from others how to treat them. And so all this learning, these are fundamental patterns that shape us. And Jenny says neglected and unmet needs. Exactly. So let's say there are needs that we have as children that are unmet. Then we develop stories or understandings around those unmet needs, like I'm not worthy, like there's never enough, or I'm not enough, or any number of other things. One of the things that I believed for a number of years was that I was the cause of all suffering. That it was my fault, and I took on responsibility for everything. So, I guess it's no surprise that part of me is out to save the world, right? Because it's all my responsibility somehow, like that. I grew up with that. And I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of other folks that are out to save the world and feeling the burden of that responsibility, or the liberation of that responsibility, or empowerment of it. But whatever it is, lots of us feel like it's our responsibility, and I see where that was part of my growing up, is that it was my fault. And so how do you compensate for something that's that you've created? Is you look to create something new or to transform it, right? So Bernadette says, whoops, let's see. Jenny says, trauma. Yep, not enough is true. So yeah, we do learn to believe that we're not enough, or that there isn't enough in the world, like that. We learn scarcity, we learn suffering, we learn anger, we learn intolerance, we learn, maybe if we're fortunate, we learn love and kindness and connection, if we're fortunate. So Bernadette says, we teach people how to treat us, whether it be unconscious or deliberate. It's true. And so one of the things in this conversation from yesterday is in saying, be alert to consciously curating your story. The foundation of that is being aware of what the story is, like what this voice is saying. It's typical of us that this voice is on overdrive all the time, doesn't shut up, and typically has all kinds of horrible things to tell us about ourselves. So Jenny says, got to become conscious and reprogram yourself. So exactly what the first step is awareness. Being aware. And so this person yesterday was saying, well, there's all these overwhelming feelings. And I said, yeah, but those feelings are a response to the conversation that's going on in the head, telling you that you're not enough, or that you deserve to be treated poorly, or that you've been discarded and you deserve that. I mean, like, that's the voice that's always got its story going. And when we recognize it, we can say, oh, there's that voice again, not like it's true, not like it even knows what's going on. And we can say, oh, that's that program story, that's the habit, that's the pattern. How can we recraft that story? What's really true? So Jenny says, Rosalind says, in response to Jenny's comment about reprogramming, it's been a lot of unlearning for me. You and everybody, Rosalind, really, because the first step is to become conscious that things don't have to be that way, right? And then to be becoming more aware of what those conversations are, and then reshaping them, or at least shifting our attention away from them to say, oh, okay, there's that gremlin that's just there to keep me small. That's the gremlin. Jenny says, I'm in the middle of learning a new way. I think we all are blazing a new trail, Jenny. In whatever degree, we're still, hopefully, as long as we're growing, what we're doing is exploring new ways of being. And so Bernadette says, my voice chatter just keeps shaking its head and pointing fingers back to me, LOL. So the thing about pointing fingers, when you point a finger, how many fingers are pointing back at you, right? So that voice that's pointing fingers and chattering, we get to change its voice, turn it into a cartoon voice, put a soundtrack on it, make it sound absurd and ridiculous, because it's just noise. It's just noise, and it's there to keep you small. And the thing is, we are here to be an expression of the unique soul song that came to express itself as life moving through us. And that narrative, as Bernadette says, we get to change the narrative. That narrative is designed to keep us from allowing our brilliance to move through us as an expression in the world. And guys, I just want to give you a heads up. Today's Thursday. I will not be here tomorrow. I'm really excited. Not that I won't be here with you, but I'm really excited because I'm going to a mushroom festival over the weekend. It's called MycoFest, and it's run by a guy named William Padilla Brown, who is a self-schooled, brilliant mycologist who was featured in the movie Fantastic Fungi. And I'm just really excited about it. I even bought a tent. I don't know if I'll get to use it, but because there's camping, but I may end up not having space to set up my tent, so I might stay elsewhere, but we'll see what happens. It should be a lot of fun. Anyway, that I realized that was a really quick transformation of conversation, but Jenny says, practice self-forgiveness, affirm how awesome you are. So I think self-forgiveness is a really, really, really important thing to do. Oh, and Jenny, you're so funny. Bernadette says, magical, have a wonderful time. And Jenny says, oh, fun, go trip on mushrooms, on shrooms. Well, they're going to be foraging expeditions for, I think tomorrow it's like 4 hours from 10 to 2 to go foraging for mushrooms in the forests. And I'm just really excited because there are so many different kinds of mushrooms, and medicinal mushrooms and magical mushrooms and nutritional mushrooms. And so I'm excited. I really do have a deep curiosity and love for mushrooms and learning about mushrooms. They're really quite remarkable. And if you guys are interested in mushrooms and you haven't already, you're funny, Jenny. If you haven't already discovered him, check out Paul Stamets, Stamets. He's done a bunch of TED Talks on 6 or 7 ways mushrooms can save the world. And it's really, really quite remarkable. Bernadette says, cool, you can teach us what ones are good for us. I already know that lion's mane is great for brain function and neural stuff. Paul Stamets, Stamets. In fact, he's such a legend. Oh, he's had some really good interviews with Joe Rogan. I really recommend that. Phenomenal. But and the movie Fantastic Fungi is amazing. He's in that movie, but Paul Stamets is such a legend that there was a character named after him in Star Trek, Paul Stamets. But he's been responsible for some of the most groundbreaking research with mushrooms. So Rosalind says, have fun regarding learning. How about the nature of a cat? A cat cannot learn to bark. Its nature is to meow. How to discern when swimming uphill or upstream versus going with the flow when curating. So I think what I'm talking about in terms of curating our stories, Rosalind, and speaking of cats, I just heard of a cat that speaks, like that has 8 words that are intelligible. And I know you've probably heard about dogs that kind of speak and have distinguishable words. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But as far as curating our story, I'm talking about the interpretation of the facts. You know, typically we will do the half-empty thing. And with the same facts, we can do half full or 4 ounces or, you know, any number of other stories. So I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about curating, like looking at the story of our lives and moving from that into the way we represent that story. Jenny says mushrooms are legal in Colorado, and I think you're talking about psilocybin mushrooms being legal in Colorado. Very cool. I didn't know that, and actually I have a friend who doesn't know that, who lives in Colorado. I know that there are some psychedelic treatment centers because mushrooms have been shown to be very, very powerful in treating things like OCD and trauma and really, really powerful. So Jenny says, have an awakening. Thank you, Jenny. I believe in microdosing too, as a way to be stimulating consciousness and awareness and developing more of our conscious capacity. So anyway, fun. So think of me tomorrow. I think that I arranged to schedule a replay. So, you know, there'll be something available for you on Enlightened World Network, but I'm going to be out and about. So, oh, and Jenny says, yes, and therapy with that horse tranquilizer, ketamine is what you're talking about, Jenny. So there's a really, really wonderful series now on Netflix done by Michael Pollan, and I believe it's called How to Change Your Mind. And it is about all different kinds of psychedelic therapies using mushrooms, LSD, mescaline, and he also has a conversation about peyote, but peyote is a sacred rite or a sacred plant for indigenous people's rights, and rites. And out of respect to indigenous peoples, it's very interesting that he said for himself he wouldn't embark on a peyote ritual because it's out of respect for its sacred place in the traditions of Native peoples. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for this morning. I wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. I'm Mira Rubin, and this is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network, except tomorrow, on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I encourage you to check out all the other awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube, and EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living, and enjoy and curate your story with joy and love for yourself and the possibility you came here to manifest. So much love to you guys, so much appreciation. I love our mornings together, and I will look forward to seeing you here hopefully next week. Lots and lots of love.